Okay, welcome everybody. As we call together a meeting of the Mashpee Sewer Commission on Thursday, October 17th. And we are being broadcast live on both local channel 8 and high definition channel 1072. And we're streamed on the Town of Mashpee website as well, mashpeema.gov, channel 8. So may I ask you to please silence your cell phones? And may we stand to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And may we also observe a moment of silence. There's so much going on with people who are still recovering from these horrible storms and floods and all. So a moment of silence, please. Thank you. So as we begin the meeting, and we will start with the approval of the minutes, but I'd also like to welcome our newest commissioner, Mr. Mohan Nair. And we welcome you aboard.
Thank you.
So we have the minutes from several meetings from the September 19th meeting and also the October 3rd meeting. And I thank Karen Leslie, who's the executive assistant in wastewater, who helped to prepare both the agenda and the minutes for us. There was a correction that carried over into our last meeting because there were some corrections from the the August 15th meeting. And I just want to call your attention to the changes that needed to be made that were presented and approved. But the minutes were reviewed and a motion was accepted. And the motion to accept was made by Mr. Lyons, and then there were some comments that were also made by Mr. Towle. So those will need to be incorporated into the approval so that we can re-vote on that. So a secondary motion was then made by Mr. Lyons to approve the minutes of the August 15th sewer meeting. So may I just have a motion to accept these corrections?
So move.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. And may we have is there any discussion about the minutes from the 9/17th? I'm sorry,
19.
the 19th, 9/19 meeting and the 10/3 meeting. We'll take them one at a time. Were there any comments from that one? I have a couple of comments, but they're not to be incorporated into the minutes. There'll be questions that I'll be raising, and one of them will have will be a question from the, that we'll be able to ask both the wastewater superintendent and the engineers later, but it has nothing to do with the minutes of the meeting. So are there any comments about the September 19th meeting?
I don't have any comments.
Okay.
I wasn't there, so I can't comment.
Okay. Then may I have a motion to accept the minutes from September 19th?
Sure, I'll propose that we make a motion to accept the minutes for both meetings.
Okay, great. Except we'll have to take them one at a time.
Okay.
Because so September 19th, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, do we get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, and then all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. And then in the last meeting, October 3rd, we didn't record that Commissioner Sprout was not able to join us for that meeting, and that's the only correction that we have to that one. So may I have a motion for accepting?
So move.
And a second, please?
I'll second it.
Okay, great, thank you. Then the minutes from the three meetings, the October 5th, the
15th.
August 15th,
August 15th.
the September 19th, and the October 3rd meetings now are accepted, and then we can have them removed from the draft minutes. And are there any comments from public comment? Hearing none, we'll just move right along then. So we welcome back engineer consultant, Sandy Tripp, for an update from GHD. And thank you so much, and again, welcome back. We've missed you.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Projecting loud enough?
I think you project loud enough, but I think for the television, they need to have you use the microphone, please.
Is that better? Oh. It is.
Okay, all right. So we're into the fall now, so I'm here to give a construction update for Phase 1, Phase 1A, and then also looking ahead to Phase 2, with Jared's help, of course. As always, we'll start with the plant. And in the last month, mainly, they've been focusing on some external details like getting roads paved. We have a binder course down. And in the buildings, getting things done like pulling wires. We still don't have the MCCs on site, so we're not able to get any of the equipment going yet. So for the roadways, you can see this last one, I'll go back up, is the entry from Carlton Drive. There will be landscaping placed along this one entry. And then on the right side here is the entry from the transfer station. We also have our internal roadways across the plant and some sidewalks going into the pedestrian doors as well as driveways into the overhead doors. Exterior structures are getting some attention. On the left-hand picture, you can see odor control covers being installed on the MLSS, which is mixed liquor suspended solids tank, or your solids tank. And on the right is a picture of the process building. Those tanks aren't installed yet, but they will be receiving those covers, and those will contain the potentially odorous air from these processes and pipe them to the odor controls treatment, which is seen here. On the left is a long shot view of the odor control structures. You have two. In the back is a carbon unit, so that's called scrubbing, where the air would go through and get scrubbed, and the carbon actually pulls the odor out of the air. And then the front unit, which is hidden by the ductwork on the left, is the biofilter. And the picture on the right shows the biofilter media, which in this case is shells. This is a new one on me. So we're bringing in some natural materials to act as the media for the biofilters to grow the organisms that will handle the odors. Not much going on in the preliminary treatment building other than pulling wires. The focus really is on the exterior tanks and the process building. And in the process building, they're pulling and terminating wires and doing some miscellaneous work. So here's the process building permeate pump room. Again, terminating wires. The pumps have been in place for a while now. Chemical room, you can see the panel open up there, and there's some wires hanging because they're beginning to terminate those. And chemical piping, some of these pipes you see going through are conduits. In fact, they're all conduits. The chemical piping is running around in there too. Process building electrical room, I show you this every month. It's still a working room because we don't have our MCCs yet, so we've got a lot of wiring going on. You can see it in the background, and you can also see the workers working diligently to get things terminated or hooked up. Collection System North, that's contract 2. That's basically done. It was substantially complete in June, and right now the contractor is picking up some punch list items. For example, they're putting in laterals into the CO condos units. On the south, this is the project that has the pump stations. They're doing roadwork restoration and cleanup, and they're also working a bit at the pump stations. There's going to be a bit of a hiatus at those pump stations because we're going to wait for the plant to start up before we drop the pumps in. This is going to give you a full warranty on these pumps. We don't want them sitting there idle for a few months. We want to put them in when we're ready to use them. And then I brought Phase A, which is the alternate rebid, Phase 1A, excuse me. That contract was awarded last summer to Dig It Construction. And just to give you a snapshot, remind everybody of what we're talking about. The green area up in the north, that's the north part of the project that has been done since June, minor work going on. The orange area is contract 3. That is another one that has been on the street for a couple of years. Pump stations are in this project. And then the blue area is interspersed. You can see 10 lots up to the very north. That's a low pressure system on Meeting House Road. That's part of the new project that's being constructed now. And you have the blue area in the middle of the picture. That's the Brewster, I call it the Brewster Road neighborhood. That's there's a pump station as part of the new project going in there. And then you've got some miscellaneous roads down in the south area that are part of this new contract. Just a reminder of what we're doing with the new contract. Oops, pushed the wrong button, sorry. So, moving in on this, on alternate rebid, they did break ground last month. They started installing the gravity sewer along Brewster Road. Starting at the pump station, you want to install gravity sewers uphill, and that's what they're doing. They did set the manhole at Brewster Road Pump Station, and you can see on that map exactly where the Brewster Road Pump Station is. It's a median off of Quiniquisette Road. Next month, they're going to continue installing gravity sewer in the Brewster Road neighborhood. So they're going to continue in this area, and they'll also be working at the pump station, probably starting to put a building up. Cash flow. Again, we start with the treatment plant. We're in period 24, so we're 2 years in. And our adjusted budget has gone up to about 30 million now. We just had a couple more change orders under review that are going to bring us about to 30 million. Well within our budget with the 5% contingency, so everything's going well there. They are about 728 days into their 790-day contract duration period. As you can see, there's 62 days remaining. Contractor's not asked for a time extension yet. They need to, and we're going to be pushing them to do this. So the reason the white line is below your pink line is because of the MCCs not being available. They can't finish up until they get the MCCs in. Collection system contract 2, that's the one that's basic. Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question? Can you go to the previous slide?
Yep.
So the earned percent of 84.5, that's on the cost, right?
That's the percent that they've actually been paid.
Yeah, so that's doesn't represent, that's 84% of the project is done, right?
It's earned, yeah.
It's
That's what
earned
they've
from
been,
a cost
that minus
perspective, but not
retainage.
from a task perspective, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
84 of them funds have been expended.
So is this extracted from a project plan, or is this done like one-off, this particular information?
Is this?
Is this part of a project plan, like a Microsoft project or Primavera? How did you do this?
This is tracked using, the contractor schedule is tracked via Microsoft Project. Most of them use Primavera, but this one's using Project. The finances are tracked, and we keep it in an Excel spreadsheet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just wondering if the plan has a critical path also in there? So,
It's through the MCCs.
yeah, so would you mind adding that in the report so that we can see what tasks are on the
The
critical path?
is?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we can give you an update on that.
All right. Thank you.
And you can, yeah, the pink line, or the blue line, and then the pink after it is the cash flow. You know, we're trying to give you a snapshot so you can see how you're going in time. You bring up a good point. Looking at a critical path schedule also tells you where you're at risk and what you have to get done. And yes, it's 92% time expended, but that time is going to be taken out further once they ask for it. Okay. On the collection system north, this job is 100% time expended. They have been given their certificate of substantial completion. The percent value earned is 84.9%. There's a little bit of retainage being held. But what this means is that you're going to get some funds back. So it came in under budget, and that's a good thing. On the south end, you can see that white line flattening out. They were tracking below the first year because this is one contractor doing both jobs, and they were focused on the other one. That's fine. They got them both done, so that's good. And then as they started putting their effort into this project around period 10, you can see that expenditure kick up. Right now it's flat because they also are waiting on the MCC so that they can finish up the pump station. All right. Any questions on phase 1 before I move on? Any more?
One question. So MCC, is the cost for MCC already accounted for? Is the cost
Cost is part of this, yeah.
is accounted for, right? Is already, okay.
Yeah.
So in other words, your amount earned to date includes that?
No, because
No.
it hasn't arrived yet. It's
Okay.
part of sorry, go back up to the right one. There we go. So it's part of the 30 million.
Right, but the
They haven't been
25.3
paid for it
doesn't
because it
represent
hasn't
that.
shown up
Yeah,
yet.
so if the MCC hits, then you might, your
Then it'll
earned value
bounce,
will
yep.
go
And
up.
all the work they're gonna do to start up their processes will come into play. Now, this is a lump sum project, so they will be paid $30 million eventually, or more if we change order in more. So the budget includes, you have a 5% contingency, which you'll always spend some of it. Not necessarily all. Okay. Phase 2 design. So this was a big month. The surveying is complete, so you probably, if you see a surveyor out there, they're picking up something that they missed. Soil borings are complete, and we've done our initial archaeological survey in Mashpee. We'll probably be out doing some intensive surveys. It may or may not happen, but it often does in Mashpee. Other permitting is ongoing, and our groundwater discharge permit is ongoing. And very importantly, the first major deadline for this project is the SRF application, and that went in on time on October 11th. So that's a big one. Let me take a couple minutes and explain the job a little. Phase 2 upgrades. Obviously, we're doing the phase 1 construction right now. When we get into phase 2, we're going to be adding equipment for your second process train. So there's 4 process trains, and each train has 2 tanks with 2 membranes in it. Those are those long tanks in the middle of the site. We're going to be equipping the second train. You're going to get 4 new open sand beds. Those are over to the east. You can see them in darker lines. You're going to get a second MLSS tank. That's up to the north of the plant. You're going to get a second biofilter with shells. And you're going to have an administration building, and that is shown toward the south of the plant. Oops, I went too far. Go back. There's a pump station contract. This includes the addition of 6 pump stations. These are similar to the ones you have going in for phase 1, the small ones and larger ones. They're going to have the same look with the cedar shingles. When we get into the resource areas, we're actually going to be putting cedar, I guess you call it cedar shake, down instead of the hardy planks, the faux cedar shingles. But they're going to have a very similar look to what you have now. And then on the linear side, we have 4 construction contracts for our phase 2 area. I've just shown the cover sheet for the 4. So this is 6 construction contracts. You're going to have grinder pump systems going in, and the gravity sewer, the low pressure sewer, and the force mains will be installed under these contracts. And if you look at the location plans on, you can sort of tell where they are if you know your town. And that's what I have.
Could you just clarify again the location areas?
The locations
Yeah, the location area for 2.
for phase 2. Contract 3 is toward the south. You see, I wish I had a
Pirates Cove.
pointer.
Pirates Cove area.
Yeah. Thank you. That's right. Pirates Cove area. This is all low pressure. Okay? Grinder pumps. Contract 4 is the other one on the
Mashpee
top.
Neck. The Mashpee Neck area.
The Mashpee Neck area. That's mostly gravity, but it does have some low pressure in it. Contract 5 is more north. It's a large, contract 5 and 6 are the 2 largest contracts. And what would you call that one, Jared?
Well, one would be mainly South Sandwich Road, Katuitt Road area, and the other one would be over towards Santuit Pond
Yeah.
area.
So you can see the dark outlines, you just have to kind of know where you are in town.
So that also includes the Lakewood area? Lakewood is a large housing development that's between South Sandwich Road and Santuit Road.
It's on the west, it's on the.
It's more to the,
On the
this is more to the west of that.
west, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I don't know the area. I'll have to look into that though. What's the name of it again?
Lakewood,
Lakewood?
yeah.
We'll check.
Okay, and then the other question that I had, when you talked about the major deadline that you reached, which was phenomenal, was the SRF application. Could you just clarify that a little bit more?
Sure. SRF is your funding source, state revolving loans. I know, I'm not gonna, you know what that is, right? It's a
Yeah.
revolving fund and you will pay it back over time for a low interest rate. You probably will get 0% loans because it's nutrient removal. Okay. You are on the intended use plan for this year. And in order to set you up for the deadlines, to get these funds, there's 2 major milestones that have to be met. The first is your SRF application package. That includes plan sets, specifications, contracts with your engineers, and a lot of documents that Rodney signed. A lot of backup from when the planning was done. And they being SRF, will spend the next few weeks reviewing your package as well as many others. And say, okay, this is a good project, it's good to go. We're issuing a project approval certificate or PAC, okay? Most projects get a restricted PAC because we don't have everything. We don't have every permit in place right now. So there's going to be, okay, you've got a restricted PAC, you need to submit your groundwater discharge permit. You need to get your MEPA approved. Well, I think we have that, but you have to get your Mass Historical. That's why we're doing the archaeological survey. Easements have to be done. So all of that needs to be in place. Your next major deadline is you asking for permission to advertise the projects. So you have to have all those things in place in order to advertise the project. That's your next step. Your next deadline is having these contracts executed by June 30th of next year.
Okay, so somewhere there was a thought of somewhere in January, is that when there was going to be the kind of the next step with the SRF being approved?
The PAC.
Or the PAC
PAC.
being approved?
But you probably get your PAC around January,
Okay, that's what I thought.
and we would like to be positioned to bid it in the winter, to put it out on the street.
Okay. That was a monumental task, so thank you very much for getting that done.
It's always, I get mad at people if they take off in mid-October. How dare you?
But this had a lot to do with the residents approving the project because it then affected the amount of taxpayer dollars versus funding versus, it's going to cost us,
And
cost
that's
the
one
town
thing you had to
residents
prove
less.
was that you had the appropriation, that you had the town's permission,
Yep.
and everything was in place.
And we're moving ahead.
And we're moving ahead, and
And
thank
you're
you.
moving ahead.
Well done.
we're excited.
Okay.
Anything else?
Great, thanks.
Are there any other questions?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda was to review or discuss the possible approval of billing method. So Jared, you've been working on this for quite a while, which is the rate study.
Ye-
What I understand was the term that we were initially using.
Yes.
Okay, take it away.
Thank you. So, actually, real quickly, I'd like to interject. I want to add some announcement as well. Ashley Fisher has now come over to the Department of Wastewater Management. She's going to be our water resources coordinator for the town, as well as she expressed interest in learning to become an operator, as well as becoming the lab technician when we build our new admin building. So this is a huge bonus for us, and
Great.
just wanted to let everybody know she's with us. So, and she's also gonna be doing grants for the town as a whole. So,
Thank you and welcome.
Awesome, thanks. That's exciting.
so back on the rate study. So we've been trying to kick around what's the best method, this back and forth, and then it was brought to my attention that the initial proposal, and when everybody was discussing this, is that the town was going to subsidize 100% of the operation, and then we would wean off as we got customers connected, which that was the hardest burden, is trying to project how many people will actually connect in the 90 days, and how many people will do it before the end of the fiscal year, and how much revenue is that going to bring in. It's actually it was a lot harder than doing it on an established, system, and I found that hard the last time I did a rate study. So it was like, there's just so much data you want to crunch. So now knowing that, really what we have to get from the commissioners today is, what I'm looking for is a vote to choose how we're going to bill. We heard earlier, it may mention we were looking at like bedroom count or fixed, fixed billing, they call it, fixed rate billing. We pick a thing, we go after it. But now knowing the information we have, I don't have to worry about dialing into, do we get enough gallonage? So now I'm back to saying that I would recommend that we use a flow-based billing system. Because now that we know the town's going to subsidize, what we can do is set the rates, determine what the average rate is being paid around the Cape, and then decide what do we want to do for a maximum rate for an equivalent home if they were to use the max amount. And then we know everybody is below that point. So we're going to put that together as long as I can, if we vote to do a flow-based. So ultimately, that's all we're looking for today is what method do you want us to go down? Do we want to do a fixed rate billing like a bedroom count, or do we want to do a flow-based billing? And like I said, I recommend the flow-based.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Have you had a chance to, you have presented and you've been working on the comparisons across the towns for quite a while now. And when you had talked to us before, you were talking about which is going to be more fair or feasible from bedrooms to the flow-based. Do you have a general idea now of what those costs might be?
So we haven't gotten into the individual costs. When we were looking at bedroom count, it was more going to be everybody pays the same amount based off your bedroom. We're not going to chase down. If you have a leak, obviously we'd still do meter reads to ensure if there's any leaks are going on, we can identify them. And then also getting in preparation of building a history for these accounts, because ultimately you do want to go to a flow-based billing at some point. This was just in that early stage when we didn't have enough customers, a lot of seasonal. It makes it hard to pin down what our estimated income would be, especially because we don't know anything yet. So, but now that we've learned that the town's going to subsidize, what that would mean is whatever we decide to charge, that money would stay within the enterprise fund that we would get. It would remain in our retained earnings. Then we would take that retained earnings after it's been certified, determine, okay, we have this much, and then we can either lower the rates, leave the rates as the same, or, if we lower the rates, or reduce the subsidy by the town and just reinvest that money back into next year's budget. So that was huge. When they told me it was 100% fund, I'm like, oh, well, this really simplified the whole process. It was a huge relief. So ultimately, that's what we're looking for. And then in your packets, I gave an example of a tiered billing system using units. And this is no factual numbers. This is just so you can kind of see how it would play out, with a simple 4-tier method. Whether we go higher or lower, that's something we'll present to you within a month. I told them we want to have it done within a month. So next month's meeting, and be able to say, okay, here's what we recommend for, billing rates and what it costs per gallon or per unit, and present that next time. I just want to this is the direction we want to use.
Just for clarification, when you the tiers/rates line, 1, 2, 3, 4, what do those?
So in a tiered type system, you would start out with a base rate. Say in
Base
this
rate
case,
is-
10,000 gallons. Everybody's going to pay the rate of it'd be $50 for that quarter. That's what everybody pays. Use it or lose it, but you pay it. Then anything after that, when you go into the next tier, you've exceeded that amount by 1
So
gallon.
this is by quarters.
Yeah, we're doing this it's not by quarters. What that is the tier. So as you use the 10,000 gallons in tier 1, then you go to tier 2. So if you use an additional 1,000 gallons, it's going to be billed out
At the tier 2 rate.
at the tier 2 rate. Any gallonage is over, and then it progresses up. One of the concerns we had is when we come to condos. When you do condos, they will quickly, if it's one, like in one of the condo areas, it's 1 meter for the whole complex. That quickly drives them into a higher area, which will greatly increase their prices. So with using the unit method, it can be broken out into those. The condo has the ability to break it out and say, hey, you have 2 bedrooms, you're rated at this much a day, and we're kind of giving them an opportunity to be able to simplify how they're going to bill their users within their level. That's if we keep it just by billing by flow. That was the main area where bedroom count could have been beneficial, where it's going to be hard trying to tack down an individual person's flow with only 1 meter. Maybe we just charge it per bedroom. In essence, it's the same thing, but it's flow-based. So if somebody does have a leak, or they have a leak somewhere, and yet we're still getting the flow and we have to treat it, well, they're going to pay for it, and not everybody else pay for it. But that we'll get into more detail. Matt is very familiar with that type of method because it's the most common used, and he'll give a good presentation when it comes time for the actual rates to be voted on.
And we can expect that maybe at the next meeting,
I
or
told
at
them-
least the end of November,
I told him we want it before Thanksgiving.
before things. Because the other question is that this was one of the concerns that the residents had brought up.
Yes.
And there was a lot of discussion and a lot of conversation, which I thought was quite good. And, the bedroom method of billing versus the flow-based method. And so, again, thank you very much for your diligence and the amount of work that you've done on this.
Yes. So, yes, like I said, I'm looking for a vote just to say, yes, go forward with the flow-based billing method.
My question that I have for you is, once we were to move forward with a flow-based system, is there any opportunity for a change in the type of system at any point in time? So once you make the decision that it's going to be flow-based, is that from now until forever? Or from now until the system is operational and we begin to see that this is the way we want to go? Will there
So-
be an evaluation process?
So the intent is, and this is why it's actually working out good, is my intent will be every January at the commissioners' meetings, you guys will sit down and discuss rates. Might not change them at all, might reduce, or might increase. But every January, we make it common method that we sit down and do it. A lot of the communities won't, we're not going to do rate increases, so we're just not going to talk about 5-6 years ago down the road. Then when you finally say, hey, we're going to, talk about rates, everybody loses their mind. So in this case, it doesn't mean we have to change anything, but we're at least going to review it. So this time period works. We can also, during that public hearing, if we choose that we want to maybe say in the condos, let's just go to the bedroom. This is a hypothetical. That can be done at a public hearing, but it does have to be at a public hearing.
I mean, in terms of the rate review?
Anytime we talk rates, if we're going to change them, or if we're going to change even a portion of the method partially or as a whole, we would have to have it as a public hearing.
So if it comes before this body, it's a public hearing?
No, it would actually have to be a posted public hearing. We'd have to be very specific.
In
There's a whole.
addition to this meeting?
Yes, we'd have to advertise in the newspaper specifically that this is what the hearing's for. We would have to notify anybody that it directly affects by mail. So it is a process. That's why we don't use it lightly. So, and like I said, the intent though would be that every January, we discuss the rates and make it just, everybody knows it's coming. And that gives everybody time, if it is adjusted, that those new rates that we talk about won't go into effect till July 1st. So it gives everybody 6 months to prepare or anything else they need to do.
Okay.
Can I ask a
And
question, Jared?
Yes.
So these two methods, right, the fixed rate and the flow, if there are a lot of seasonal people in the mix, with the flow rate, you might tend to lose our revenue?
So everybody would pay the first tier, regardless.
Base- the
Yeah,
base-
regardless.
yeah.
It's that base rate, use it or lose it. There are communities that when they have a high seasonal community area, they have seasonal rates. I'm not feeling that's something we need to discuss at this point, at all. That would be something that, as we're trying to wean off, if this is taking longer, there needs to be, then we can discuss seasonal rates. But at this point, it's just, if you use it and you're in the town, knowing that we're gonna be subsidized and then working towards decreasing that subsidy every year, we can slow into it and then decide in the future if that's something, an example, something we can do for the seasonal community people.
But there will be fixed maintenance costs no matter what, whether you're using it or not. So
Right, that's
gonna be
why
borne by
they
the-
pay that first tier,
Okay.
because regardless if they flush the toilet or not, they still have to maintain
Right.
the infrastructure in front of
Right.
it, and that's what they're paying
Right,
for.
right.
And that would be covered in the first tier, and then anything beyond that first tier is actual usage, and then we charge them as they go up the tiers, incremental increases in what it costs per gallon, or per unit.
Would
Yep.
you mind spending just a little more time explaining the condo account level and unit level and what the billings line?
So that's the one we're gonna get into more detail. So when we say the account level, that means if we wanna only
For the whole-
charge the whole, like.
The whole condo complex.
And that's one of the things I get concerned about. There was a commercial condo complex in Tisbury that I was with, and somebody shut down their business for the winter, flushed the toilet, and the toilet ran all winter long. They get their next quarter bill, it's $23,000 increase. All right, now the condo's going, we don't have that money in our budget, we can't pay it. You know, go after the person, they're telling me. No, you're my customer, not the person that's renting the condo. You pay the bill, but we can't get there. You have to pay the bill. It was a back and forth for 6 months because they wanted me to go after the individual person.
Yeah,
So, but in this case, if we do by the units, he's just giving an example that if we decide to leave it as the condo owner as a whole, or if there's ways we could break it down to the individual condos, or the condo owner could break it down.
but at the unit level, you have to have a meter.
Yes, in some of them we can, or we can break it down to buildings. It doesn't have to be the individual
Building,
home. Yeah,
okay.
we can maybe break it, if they have a metered building, then it could be broken down a little bit farther. And that's kind of what he's explaining, you know, because as of right now, I know the two that we have, they're not individually metered every single unit.
So a metered building is another option
Yes.
not looked at here.
And
Okay.
that's how far down we want to break down these accounts.
But if you're talking about a building that has like 10 units, and it's 10,000 apiece is your base rate, right?
Yes.
So that's,
And that's how we would figure it out, and that's how if they were going to keep it at the complex or the homeowners association or whatever level, then that's how they could go and send out their bills to their customers for their association fees.
interesting. Okay.
Are there any other comments or questions?
And we'll give a better presentation when it actually comes time to talk
So are we
rates.
being asked to vote on to move forward on this today? Is that?
We're
that's
being
what you're
asked to move forward just on the method you want us to actually put together the
For the
numbers.
presentation.
Yep, and then at that presentation, we would have to make it a public hearing when you guys actually set the
Okay.
rates.
And at that presentation, will we see the comparison with other towns?
Yes, you'll see the comparisons with the towns. I already have that, but we'll put it all in a format, like this is where you'll be in the sliding scale, and we'll identify, is this town already subsidized? Because that does make a
Yeah,
difference.
that does make a difference.
It makes a huge difference. You look on the Cape, it literally goes to $400 annually to $1,200 annually. And it's a great swing. But you can also tell the $400 one is heavily subsidized.
Okay.
Okay, I have another question, though. If we were to vote on, say, go forward with the rate structure or the flow-based method, is it a lot more complicated to also have a rate schedule for bedrooms so that people have a comparison?
No, it wouldn't. So one of the things what we do is, once we've established, you set your rates kind of like looking at average flow usage in your area. So once we kind of know what our average flow usage, how we set the rates at, you can quantify what that would be per bedroom. Because I know most 3-bedroom houses use this amount of flow, just looking at our actual use records. So what would that be in a bedroom style? This amount per bedroom. And then we could quantify that and adjust it
So,
each year as well.
just trying to think out the calendar here. So once phase 1 is fully connected and the treatment facility is processing all this stuff and people are paying a quarterly bill, is that what you're thinking?
Yes, once they've tied on, they would, and we're thinking quarterly. I mean, it could go monthly. It's staffing, equipment, cost-wise.
So it would be like $50 a quarter?
Yes,
Okay, so base rate. So if we're looking at $50 a quarter,
4 quarters, $200.
first, year, the users are paying the base rate, the rest is being subsidized?
No, everything's gonna be subsidized in the beginning.
Everything's
When I put in my budget this year,
So for essentially for what, year 1? It's completely subsidized, nobody pays anything?
no, they're still gonna pay. That was that point I was making
They're
about
still gonna
retainer.
pay
They
the
still
base
pay,
rate.
but the money that's actually paying for the operation of the facility will be
goes
appropriated
into
at
the
town meeting.
It goes into the retainage?
Yeah, and it'll go into retained earnings, and then we can use that money to reduce the subsidy or to,
Manage it?
yes, change the rates, whatever we want to do in that while we're dialing in.
Okay,
Yes.
but the owner will receive a notice saying how many gallons they used, and this is...
Yeah, they'll get a bill and it'll have the actual meter read on it.
They'll be able to measure that quarterly?
Yes.
Compare quarterly?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting, okay.
Yep, they'll be able to go down to their meter and look at their bill and read the numbers, and obviously they've used water since they get it, but they'll be in the ballpark.
So how much do you think, I probably don't think Phase 1 is necessarily representative of the rest of the areas in Mashpee, but it's a good starter. Will we be doing that with Phase 2, for example?
Well, once we move into phase 2, we'll keep the same method. We don't discuss that. We'll have our rates. That's when we'll discuss, do we want to increase? Do we want to leave the same? Do we want to reduce? We
Is
leave
that
it there. And that
speculation?
income will slowly become, as that income comes in, that's probably going to be the greatest factor of removing us from a subsidy. As we get more homes tied on, we're getting more money coming in, start reducing what we're taking from the town.
Yeah,
So-
it's too early to speculate on
Yeah.
that, but I'm just trying to think timeline-wise what the expectation that average resident can see. So quarterly for the first year or so, the user will get that bill. They'll see what they have to pay. They'll know how many gallons they're using and whether the base rate covers it. That kind of thing, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And we'll be able to project, like, we already do have flow records. Most of these homes have been on town water anyways. So once we put that set in a dollar amount, we'll give you examples like, what if we did 0.04 cents a gallon? Then we'd be able to sit there and pull up a person's home, look at their consumption from the water department and go, well, traditionally this is what they would pay. And that's how we will try to dial in our numbers as to what is a fair, reasonable, not breaking anybody's back starting bill amount. And then we can see, because some people are going to literally tighten their belts and go, hey, you know what, I'm going to save money and reduce my water flow. And that does affect the billing. It happens. And then if you have a high rain year, people use less water and things like that. So actually, we don't have irrigation on town water. So
thinking irrigation
Yeah.
doesn't really fall into the water use.
the town, and I'm sure there's still people that will hook up the garden hose, even though it's not a fixed irrigation system. They're still running plenty of water, and maybe they'll stop doing that one year. But in 1 year, it's a dry season, they might do it more. And then, so those are things we try to account for in percentage-wise, but we don't really dial in numbers. We just look at average usage.
So just so I'm clear, when we keep talking about the meter, we're talking about the water meter.
Yes.
Do you take 100% of that, or you take like 80%? I'm thinking, how much of that water
Do you know?
goes to the
Sewer.
sewer as opposed to watering or whatever?
So the rule of thumb in most places where they do allow irrigation is, but a lot of it is what comes in, some way, shape, or form will end up going back into the sewer, in theory. The vast majority, 95+%. The occasional sprinkling, we're not going to dial into that small amount of money. But if you have an irrigation system, that could be a large sum of money. So then what we do is we put on what's called a deduct meter.
Right.
And so whatever comes into the meter, we deduct what the second meter reads, and usually it's fixed to 1 point.
That's exactly where I was going.
Yep, but we don't know, we technically are not supposed to have any irrigation, so that should not become a factor.
Where does the deduct meter go?
It usually goes almost, it's proximal to wherever that faucet or fixture is. It's usually right in that area, because what the key is you're always looking,
So it's where
you
they're
put it back
trying-
here next to the first meter and run the pipe all the way there, but somebody's gonna tap off of it 3 times to do something. So we try to get as close as we can to minimize the opportunity for them to tap it.
average local person that just uses a hose to water their vegetable garden.
Yeah, we normally don't take that into account, because,
You're not deducting that.
right.
And for people on a well?
So if you are on a well, and that's one of the things that came up with the bedroom count thing, there is 2 options. I mean, we can, obviously, the commission can decide, oh, we're gonna do a fixed billing, or we can require that the person put a meter on their well, which then we would supply, that would be the same type of meter. Well, they'd purchase it from us. It'd be the same type that the water department uses. That way, we're not mixing things up. And we would seal it to make sure it doesn't get tampered with or, pulled out, and then we would meter that for the flow.
What fun.
If I'm trying to think, we have no irrigation, so no, that would even, so that's one of the options, like the condo complex, one of them is on a well. 3 of the private roads are on wells. They don't have, town water. So that's the option. I mean, they do have a pipe coming to the house. They could have a meter installed. And then we just, same concept. What came in is gonna go into the sewer. Those homes, though, we might have to mainly have the consideration about deduct meters, though, because they already have a well, they can use it for irrigation if they choose to. And if they do, then we just have to add the deduct meter so they don't get.
Do you know the percentage of homes within the sewer construction and collection area that are on wells at this point?
I don't know the exact percentage. I would say it's approximately in that neighborhood, maybe 30 homes approximately. It's the Spinnaker Lane area.
Right,
That area there, they're not on town water.
so,
And there's 2 branch roads off it. I don't know the exact number of homes, but it's
yeah, because we thought it was maybe somewhere around 10% overall, so that's almost 10%.
so.
All I know is there's one thing about being on town water, and there's another thing about having town water that you choose not to use it. You still have a well, but it's the same thing, you'd be metered, yeah.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So it's not a question, it's kind of more of a statement. So we have town water going in front of our house forever, but we just chose never to hook up to it.
Right, so you're still on your well, yeah.
But I seldom think about entire roads not having the available town water. That's kind of new, but.
Even on Route 130, there are some homes that are on well, even though there is town water.
Yeah.
So I think that's not an anomaly, so it's a
No.
good thing you brought it up.
And I know, like, for example, you're on a farm, so you use lots of water.
It's separate wells.
That's what I was gonna say. Usually, even if it's the same well, though, you're gonna have a branch off. One's gonna go out to the farm, one's gonna go to the house. We just meter what goes into the house.
Yeah.
Well, I move that we have Jared continue with the flow-based billing system and come back with further details.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, aye.
Thank you.
Well done, thank you for your work.
Thank
Okay, so I wanted to just put in a few, I have a few questions that I wanted to put into the chair's report, as that would be the next item on the agenda. Was there anything else you wanted to add on the rate?
Nope, nothing under rate.
But
Thank
we
you.
will have you do a report as well. Okay, so there was also, and when you give your report, you had also, so this is one of my questions, and I don't know if you want me to wait till later or when you give your report, but you had talked about attending the Cape Wide wastewater meeting on October 9th. And
I was
you
going to
wanna-
discuss that in my ear, but if you'd like, we can
No,
discuss it now?
No,
Okay.
no, we'll wait until you can put it all together. So the only things I wanted to put in a plug for is that the town is in dire need of people to work with us, to work with all of the committees and the commissions. So we're in dire need, really, of people applying and applying to become recording secretaries for numerous boards, and also to put in a plug for people volunteering to be members of the commissions and the boards. And of course, being selfish, I would really like to have the commissions and the committees and the boards that impact water around town to be staffed better than they are now. And Conservation Commission is one that's in need. Sewer Commission still has another opening. The Zoning Board of Appeals still has openings, and affordable housing. So when we think about the coordination among housing, water, conservation, land, stormwater, we really need to have functioning committees and boards. And so I'm going to put in a plug for people being able to recruit, if we can recruit people for these openings. And the openings can be found on the Select Board and on the Town of Mashpee website. So I just wanted to put in a plug for that. I also wanted to make note of a few things that have been going on that I think are really important in terms of our, I'm very impressed with the amount of coordination and cooperation among the boards and among the different commissions that work together and that are working in their own separate areas, but will have an impact on everything. So we have had a presentation by Select Board Member Wyman Colombo, who talked about the municipal agreements. And we know that there are conversations going on now about the municipal agreements. And the question becomes, and then once we have these municipal agreements in place, then what? I mean, how are we all going to be working together? And I know that you've been a part of it. I know that Ashley has been a part of it. I know that Commissioner Colombo has been a part of it. So once the IMAs become codified, then what? And I know that that's not something we can answer right now, but can you just give me a,
Well, example, it could be joint projects, or like a lot of the TMDLs will say a percentage of the nitrogen is coming from this town.
Yeah.
So a lot of the intermunicipal agreements, to make sure we're always talking to each other, making sure, okay, what are you doing? Or, hey, you know what, we don't want to build nothing, but we're going to finance a portion of your project, and we're going to take those credits and say we're paying off our 6% that we have.
that's what I assumed.
And that's what
Yeah,
those
that-
conversations will be more about.
So it'd be really talking about the nitrogen reduction and the amount of cooperation that can be taking place among all of the towns that are involved in the two watersheds, the Papaneset watershed and the Wacoit watershed. And we're moving forward. I know each time we do get a report that there's better conversations, and more constructive conversation. And again, I applaud you all who are working on it. The other the other statement I wanted to make is that Catherine and I did present in front of the realtors, and those slides that we used for talking about giving residents information about the sewer project and where it's going and how it's going to the realtors, because we feel that realtors, landscapers, residents are all part of asking questions and are being able to answer questions and are being able to go to other boards and other commissions to help keep residents informed about what's going on. So those slides are now in our sewer commission website in the archives section. So it's mashpeema.gov, and it's on the sewer commission, and it's in the archives. And again, thank you, Catherine, and to Karen Leslie for helping to put these together and put them into the website. I also wanted to give a shout out to APCC and what they've been able to do in order to help protect our soul aquifer
Aquifer.
with help from the citizens of Cape Cod and the citizens of Mashpee, who have worked to put some pressure on the governor to try to stop the multi-purpose munitions range from threatening our aquifer. And this has, as people have been talking about it, both from the select board, within, everywhere, it's not, it's fully in support of the military. It's just being also concerned about our sole source aquifer and coming up with a different process for this.
Commissioner Harris, has there been specific evidence that the projected range failed to meet any of the environmental standards that were set to protect the aquifer?
Say that again.
Okay, so there obviously were standards that they had to plan to meet when they were constructing and planning this particular range.
Yes.
So has there been any evidence that they failed to meet those standards, and that if they had proceeded with this range, there would have been imminent danger of contamination?
I think it was, I can't answer specifically because I don't know the details. I do know that there were some plans that didn't meet the questions that were asked in terms of how, what the disposal processes were going to be. So I think if you go into the details of the plans that were raised, and I think that there's been publicity about what was presented and what was organized and what was discussed. I think part of it had to do with not meeting the questions that were asked to protect the water, the
Okay,
aquifer.
were these questions asked by citizens, or were these questions that were brought up by the people who were tasked with making sure that the project was going according to plan?
I believe that it had to do with the Environmental Protection Agency and their questions not being answered.
I think
I think-
EPA said it's not a good idea. So then, from what I read, was that the Joint Base proposed this as a federal project bypassing EPA oversight, which is what Governor Healy struck down.
There was also initially a lot of questions that there was inadequate community participation in the planning process and in the review process, and that it was pushed through really quickly early on without adequate review. And I think that really
I think-
added to the distrust of, and then other questions came up. But yeah, that was an initial problem.
Does that answer your question?
Well, have we had anybody from this project come out and talk with us? Because I just get the feeling that we've only heard one side, the people who want to shut it down. And I know there's a great need for this project to go forward on the Cape. It's a very important training facility. I don't know where else it could be built, but I know that it was going to serve every soldier, every National Guard that had to meet specific qualifications on equipment in a local area. Now, they all have to go to New Jersey. They lose very valuable training time in transition. So I was kind of aware of it in the beginning. I haven't followed it recently, but I know at least in the beginning, they made a very concerted effort to meet every regulation that was proposed. And so I wanted to know what has substantially changed from when they were meeting all the regulations to now.
I can't answer your questions in detail, but we can find out so
Okay.
that, and give you the sources so that you do have the information.
Yeah.
I know that there was a deadline in terms of when the funding was going to be running out, which is the end of September. And so all of the plans were not put together in enough time, and that the answers were not given by the time for the funding to be available. So the point is that the funding was not available for now.
For now.
But we will follow up on it and give
So-
you more additional information.
Okay, so that means in essence with the funding not being available now, and it most likely will not be available in the future.
From what I understand, and there was a presentation by members of the military at the select board meeting, and the question was asked whether or not there would be additional funding requested, and they said at this point they didn't believe that would be.
Okay, thank you.
I think we also need to give a shout out that for the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, they had played a large part in the Dennis wastewater management plan. That was just, it was quite effective now in helping Dennis lower their costs and to the taxpayers in Dennis as they move forward on their wastewater management plan. And so Mashpee has also been afforded an opportunity to work with the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund. So I think that there are so many different ways in terms of coordination and cooperation that funding is helping to reduce the cost to the residents, and I think that that's important. And then one other one I wanted to mention, how many of you have seen the construction that's taking place on Route 130 near Lake Avenue? I went for a run and I was surprised to see that that there's quite a bit of construction being done around the pond, the little pond that's there, where the herring run is. And this also is a wonderful example of cooperation among multiple groups, the town of Mashpee, the Wampanoag tribe, APCC, and there's one other group that actually told me, but I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, what is it?
It's NRCS, Natural Resources.
Oh, and
So National Resources Conservation, but if you look at what's going on, there's a tremendous amount of work that's being done in helping to restore the area around the herring run. And then also a shout out to Dan Kent from Conservation, and those are the volunteers who also helped with the herring count, and APCC who help with the herring count, so that we're beginning to see a flow and movement of fish coming back where they need to be coming back, as we see that there are changes in what's happening in our water quality, even though the sewer construction and the collection process of the sewer project will take a while, but there are so many other projects that are going on that are really hopeful that our water is being
focused.
focused on and is being taken care of. So there's one other thing that we need to keep an eye on, and that the management plan for Mashpee Wakeby Pond, that was a 2-year study, is now completed, and that there is supposed to be a management plan that's being presented, and this is from University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, the School of Marine Science and Technology, who'll be presenting the management plan sometime soon. I think it's coming before the Select Board in November?
That's the tentative date, sometime in November.
Sometime in November. So we're looking to see what else is going to be happening in terms of, again, one of the other water bodies that we knew were in trouble. Ashumet Pond, we know, had been in trouble. Santuit Pond, we knew, had been in trouble, and that they're being addressed. However slowly, but they're being addressed, and it's kind of hopeful that things are changing in the water world. So the next item, any questions, any comments? Okay, the next item on our agenda is to hear from the wastewater superintendent and his update.
Thank you. So, like we talked about before, there was a Cape-wide wastewater superintendents, directors, whatever title we had. We've basically formed a group. We're going to we're determining if we want to, how often we want to meet, and to set our main goals. And a lot of it has to do with biosolids. What are we going to do with all the sludge? It's a huge concern. And then we talked staffing was one of our major concerns, and groundwater discharge, which it's affecting all the towns. And that's what this group is going to focus on. Is one of the things you find when you meet with the DEP about groundwater discharge is we're all beating the same bush, going to these meetings and presenting the same things, and with maybe some little different variant, and we'll get denied, the next town will get approved, and it's like, well, what was different? And they won't tell us what was different. So this is an opportunity for us to say, hey, this is what we worked with, this is how we got it approved, or this is what they're looking at, so we're not all beating the same bush. That's one of our goals, is try to be able to use this information that way. And then ultimately the biosolids is it's not the immediate, like it's not an emergency right now, but it's rapidly becoming the emergency. And we've all recognized that. And Joint Base Cape Cod was there, or the Converge, the actual operators, not Converge, but the operators, that company, they were there in full support of this, which will be a huge push for us to try to get Converge to maybe get involved with doing the solids handling. So But the group seems, it was more of a feel of the first meeting, and then if people liked it, how would we go forward and what would be our primary goals. And it seemed to be a very good meeting. Everybody was very positive with it. We got a lot of information passed back and forth. And we're all dealing with the same issues. If we want to staff our own, how do we do it? There's no wastewater operators. So it's very, I think it's positive, yes.
What is the traditional way of handling biosolids?
So right now, we would probably ship it to Rhode Island. Rhode Island is in an active effort to try to stop any out-of-state sludge coming in. The next option for us would probably be like Ithaca, New York. I think it is Ithaca, but it's in New York.
So definitely traveling.
It's definitely traveling, which greatly increased the cost to begin with. And then if it's wet or if it's dry, so it's, do you have cake? It really matters what type of sludge it is and what percentage of solids it is. And so, we're trying to see if there's a way we can find something closer to home. I mean, with the PFAS, that's limiting where people want to take it and, or not take it. So it's going to be a huge expense and a huge issue coming up very fast. So that's our number one goal to try to address that any way we can. Almost try to make like a little lobbying group out of it, so we can try to all make the same phone calls and the same push.
How many towns are represented at the meeting?
So everybody at the Cape was invited. I think we had 7 actual towns show up. Some people just couldn't make it because of the short notice. We're talking about, like, do we want to meet quarterly? Do we want to meet monthly? How do we want to do this? And so that's one of the surveys that's going to go out for us to decide how often we think we could do this.
And is everyone having to have the discussion about whether or not there'll be wet solids or dry solids and how you'll be handling them?
Well, we're not
Is that
talking
gonna
about
be
individually. That's usually like a individual town engineered process and money, and how would they decide what they want to go to. What we're looking at is either way, whether it's wet or cake, it's an issue getting rid of it. And it's
Right,
costly,
regardless of
and it's going to get worse. And especially now with all these new plants opening up and more people being connected, it's only becoming a bigger problem very fast.
But it means no nitrogen's going into the estuaries. So,
Right. And in order to meet
it's a
that, though,
cost.
for every positive, for every action, there's a reaction. And
It's
this
a
is
co-
the
there's a co-
reaction of that. And we're
there's
trying
a
to now, how do we
cost.
solve this reaction?
yep.
And was there any
Fighting pollution.
discussion?
There is a solution.
Okay, so was there any discussion as well about more regionalization of plants?
So
As they begin expanding?
there was not specific discuss, because we're not a policy group. It's more like these are the technical things we're dealing with and how can we deal with it. But there already was collaborative ideas like, hey, what if we, invested together in an outfall pipe or whatever, looking at different groundwater discharge, so, or discharge of the effluent. So there's already started that going, but ultimately we all do recognize, though, that is a policy level decision that usually, has to be in front of a board like yourself, but we will try to kick around ideas to bring forward to boards. Like I said, it was the first meet and greet and people throwing things out, and then we decided let's narrow it down to what's our top 3 goals and then what's our other goals. And
So in some point, there'll be discussion from this technical working group that will also be coming through coming forward to the groups that are representing the IMAs, so that's where the policies and the technology can potentially and hopefully come together at some point in time with some joint possibilities of operation
yes,
wastewater across the region.
or when a community, and this is just a hypothetical, anybody was, but like, let's say we decided we're going to do a solids handling facility with smaller, we're going to make cake here, or we're going to receive septage. Well, we can build maybe a little bit bigger and charge other towns to come in, as opposed to every town building their own.
Right. That's what
So those are the things we'll discuss, and this now we have kind of more of an informal, this is down at the nuts and bolts level of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Can you handle it? Yeah, no, okay. And then we can then bring it to the decision makers as an idea of an option going forward. But like I said, it's like first meeting, we're just throwing out there, how can we be effective and how can this affect our future? How can we make it positive?
Excellent. Another example of cooperation, coordination. Any other comments or questions?
Great.
Okay. Yep.
So we did meet briefly, or actually good long meeting about the policy review. We've pretty much finished the first 4. The last part is there's other policies. Once we finish them, they're referenced in the earlier policies, and I'll, wherever they finally end up, I will address that in there. it's pretty much all the policies. We got to remember this is for like the users and the contractors and ourselves. So it's a regulation. The policies, those are separate. We only have 2 technically right now that are approved by the board. But that part's done. The only thing is, once we get done with the billing method and how we're going to, what the rates are going to be, there will be a whole billing policy, how to collect, debt, what can and can't we do? Because a lot of people don't realize you're only allowed to make so many phone calls and make contact before it becomes harassment. That'll be written down into a policy so that in the future, any person that's on board can open it up and say, okay, this is how I do my bills. This is how often I do my bills. This is how we collect our bills. This is how we deal with outstanding bills and so forth. So that'll be the last one we put together based off of this rate study.
So if you refresh my memory, this is that original 61-page document of how to build a sewer system?
Yeah, a lot of it is like construction, design requirements, what you can and can't do, what you can't
Right.
flush, what you can flush. It's mainly all that type of stuff, what vocabulary we use. It's more like a technical.
Right. In the policy where residents who will be connected to the collection system, that packet of their application and the review of their process of connecting and being reviewed for connecting will all be part of that?
So the policy, the whole application process, it's actually not going to be the regulation. It's
Okay,
it's a
different.
administrative level type paperwork and forms. It'll be, we can be able to change it as need. Oh, add this, in the application or not. So that's that. But that won't be part of the regulation, other than addressed as how we will collect the money.
Right. So one is be the rules and regulations that you're working on, and the other will be the process in informing residents and how they'll connect and what can
Yep.
be put into the sewer system, a collection system, and all of that will have to be educational.
Yes, in that packet, yeah, we'll also submit things like, this is what fog is, this is what we don't want inside the system and how it could damage the system. Little reminder, so, because when they get on the sewer and once they connect, they're gonna need to know, don't flush paint thinner down the toilet.
Well, it's
So,
much like the rules and regulations with the
Yep.
transfer station, of what you can put there, what can be in recycling, what can't be, and those kinds of things, and how you get your application and how you pay, all of that will be a part of it.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
So last meeting, it was asked to look into about having a drone fly over. Ashley actually did some research for us and found that it's not it's a restricted area, but it's not a no-fly area. And because it's a restricted area, there's FAA licensing and registration that you have to have. And even though it's under what's required for have a license registration, because it's restricted, you still would have to register your drone. So once you get that registration, then you'll be able to get the, I don't know, is it a permit or?
You just get you're registered with the FAA, so when you go up in here.
It'll ask for a code so you can actually fly into that area. And and you just have to get registered in order to get that code. So it's been passed on to Mashpee TV, and he's aware of it, and they'll be working on it so they can try to get that done.
This was a question that came from Commissioner Towle at the last meeting, to find out whether or not we could have a drone to look at the collection system, the wastewater treatment system and the collection system, to inform residents of what's going on.
Yep, and give a good visual from
Good
up
visual.
above.
Exactly.
So that has been looked into and it has been passed on. So the fence, last meeting we heard about the pump station on Falmouth Road. I did get a quote from the fence, and it's under, since we have the savings and it's under that amount of money, I told them go ahead and install the fence. It'll be along the back of the property, 5 feet down on one side, 10 feet down the other side. This should obstruct visual as they're driving onto their property, as well as reduce sound from the road traveling through that open space. So that'll be installed. They've already talked to the installer, and they haven't given me a date yet, but it's going to happen soon.
Thank you. That was such a concern for the residents, and I think it was nice that they were respected and they were listened to, and that you're moving forward with it. Thank you very much.
Yep. And the last thing I had was the related to the correspondence question. You guys not seen emails? So Catherine and I talked to,
Karen.
yes, Catherine and I talked about this, and we said, okay, What we're going to do is basically every correspondence comes in. Some of it's technical stuff that we answer at our level. We're still going to forward you a copy of it at the meeting. It'll be in your packet.
Right.
And that'll be in its own separate group. And then there'll be a group of questions that are more for the board. But at least you can see, and if you want to make further comment on whatever we addressed, it'll give you the opportunity to see it and make further comment.
That's a good point, because we did receive additional question from residents in Summerwood. And I want to thank Mr. Brown, who did send in additional correspondence and asking and informing us about what his concerns were about the pump station and visually how it was affecting them. And that it's wonderful to know that you've already taken care of it and that their concerns are going to be addressed. But I think this is so critically important that we listen to the residents as questions come up about this is a brand-new project. It's never been done before in Mashpee. And so the more responsive we are to the residents, the more informed, we can inform them, the more we can find out about things that are going on. So again, thank you very much.
Yes, and I think, I just want to double check. That's actually all I have on my update specifically. Now I'm free for questions.
Are there any questions of Jared? And as I've said before, I don't know when you sleep, because you get an awful lot of work done, but thank you so much for your contribution to our town. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The other item on the agenda is about the website, and we haven't done anything more right now, other than trying to keep it updated and informed, but there's only so much work that can be done. But the slides, as I mentioned before, about the information slides that are available in the archive section on the website. But we will continue to work on it and continue to keep residents informed with information that they may be needed. So this flow of information and correspondence from residents will be critically important, that we know how to address these on the website as well. Okay, are there any other issues or items that any of the commissioners would like to raise or bring up? Or Jared, do you have any?
I might have one question about the Brewster Road one. When will that be completed?
So the contract is 18 months, right, from the time they started for Brewster Road and
I'm
the pump
just
station?
wondering about the disruption in the area.
Or is it 2 years, full 2 years?
2 years?
That's what we allow for linear work in the pump station. So the
The dis-
overall project would 2 years. I don't know when they'll have the specific pump station done.
What was your
Well,
concern
I'm
specifically?
just- the disruption in the area for the residents, I'm just concerned about that. When will that be?
You mean traffic, or what is it you mean disruption?
There's
I
a lot
think
of heavy
th-
equipment in
there's a
there.
lot of heavy equipment, and there's, piles of dirt, and it's obstructive.
Was this the same issue that you had raised a few weeks ago
No.
as well, Commissioner Sprout? No,
this
different,
is
okay.
fairly new.
All right, so this is,
I think I'm not sure residents were informed about the entire process right in front of their houses, so.
Well, I know Environmental Partners has been knocking on doors, talking to homeowners, putting the stakes in the ground. We actually put them in earlier to give homeowners plenty of time to make choices, so they're aware.
They're aware of the lift
They're
station?
absolutely aware that we're tearing up the roads and we're doing this because we put it out early to make sure they had time to respond and not say, oh, here it is, you got 2 days to decide if you want to move. That wouldn't be fair. So we actually, once we awarded the contract to dig it, that was in one of the first meetings. Let's get the stakes out there before, all the people head south for the winter, and then they come back and go, well, that's not where I wanted it. I wanted to put a garage there now that I have, sewer. Well, we wanted to make sure people had that opportunity. So everybody is aware this is going on. And it is a construction project. I mean, they're not going to have the whole area torn up all at once. They're going to be moving down. They're going to be moving back in some cases, depending if it's grinder pumps going in. It'll be flowing. As far as the road being paved, yes, it'll be a little bumpier until we're completed with the project or significantly completed with the project.
have you heard anything specifically from residents about what their concerns are? And if so, maybe we could figure out or find out what they are.
I'm not sure all of them were adequately informed, or sufficient, I don't know, not informed enough, and it is pretty a visual disruption.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult because the yards come right up, obviously, to the streets. The streets are not that wide, and yet the equipment
It-
to
Is
put this
taking up
stuff
a lot of the
is
street.
very big.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
it's got to go somewhere, and it's difficult when you realize it's a project, it has to be done, and there's no place else to park this stuff.
The police are doing great. I mean, they're awesome. I really want to thank the police department for all they do, and
Now, if you have things like materials, or if there's just a trailer sitting there all day long, they dropped it in the morning, and it's not, I could address things like that, because they did get the area that RBO used for staging their equipment by the power company, and that was available to dig it to be able to use as well. So there should be no reason why they can't just drop let's say the Bobcat off, drive the trailer up to there, park it, and free up the roads a little bit more so people can at least drive by.
I don't think it was that type of equipment.
No.
It was things that were eventually going to go in the ground, and, yeah.
Okay, materials, and they're not leaving them there overnight, though?
There's a fenced area, they put up a fence around the area.
Oh, so the pump station. Yeah, the pump station, yeah, there's work that's gonna be going on over time, and they're gonna have it fenced off. But as far as, I thought you're talking like leaving linear pipe on the ground for the collection system, no, that should be only brought down when they needed it.
okay.
But again, important to mention, important to address.
Yeah.
And if
Just
we have.
keep an eye on it.
Yeah, and if
Once
we
the
have people
subsurface
who-
work's done, they're gonna backfill it, because
Okay.
you don't wanna leave a hole open. It's just so much liability there, somebody could fall in there. So as quick as they can get all the subsurface work done, they'll backfill it, then they'll start the building and things like that. I think what they're seeing right now is all that subsurface work. I went out there and saw that the other day.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Any other issues to raise? Well, then I will entertain a motion.
I so move
I'll
that
se-
we
I'll-
adjourn.
I'll second it.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, we stand adjourned then.
Thank you.